You're listening to the No Bullshit Vegan Podcast, episode 168. Entrepreneur and cookbook author Radhi Devlukia joins me today for a discussion about mindful and intuitive eating practices.
Welcome to the No Bullshit Vegan Podcast. Myth-busting and evidence-based advice to help you kick butt with your health and fitness on a vegan diet. Here's your host, Karina Inkster.
Hey, welcome to the show. I'm Karina, your go-to no BS vegan fitness and nutrition coach. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you're an awesome plant-based human who wants to work on building fitness and nutrition habits that you will still have when you're 103, we would love to have you on our client team. We have a few spots open right now, and you can learn more at karinainkster.com/coaching. One of our clients recently shared with us, "I'm really excited about this program. It's exactly the base I need to keep the self-care going, which equals joy." Now, as you probably know, if you've listened to this show before, we do things a little bit differently around here. We don't use before and after photos anywhere in our marketing. We don't use words like cheat meals, and we focus on long-term habit building instead of immediate and drastic results. So we're not anti-aesthetic goals or anti-weight loss goals, but we are anti-aesthetic goals or weight loss at the cost of health. So we work with our clients on fostering nutrition habits and a movement practice that adds enjoyment and increases quality of life. So head to karinainkster.com/coaching to learn more and to apply for one of our available coaching spots. Today, I'm excited to have Radhi Devlukia on the show. She's a plant-based cook, recipe developer, mission-driven entrepreneur, and co-founder of Juni Tea. Her debut cookbook, JoyFull, comes out this month, February 2024. Born and raised in the UK, the rich traditions of her Indian culture played a significant role in shaping Radhi's path toward wellness from an early age, leading her to develop a deep appreciation for the mind-body connection and igniting her curiosity for culinary exploration. As a modern-day advocate for holistic well-being, Radhi practices conscious cooking and embodies the idea that nourishing the body can be an enriching and pleasurable journey without compromising flavor. She's amassed a global audience of millions of loyal followers through her natural lifestyle brand, sharing recipes, nutritional insights, and mindfulness practices. Radhi's commitment to business with a purpose is illustrated with her partnership with cruelty-free fashion brand Samara. In 2019, Radhi partnered with the brand to create a limited edition vegan leather weekender bag and a necklace line using semi-precious stones that promote healing and joy, all of which sold out in minutes. In 2021, Radhi launched Juni, an adaptogenic sparkling tea brand, available exclusively at Erewhon locations and online. Radhi has been featured in People, Women's Health, Vogue India, Forbes, Today Show, Access Hollywood, and more. Through her recipes, teachings, and vibrant spirit, Radhi continues to inspire individuals around the world to savor the flavors of life while prioritizing their health and vitality. Radhi resides in Los Angeles with her husband, Jay, and her favorite vegan meal is spicy romesco pasta. Here's our conversation. Hi, Radhi. Thank you so much for coming on the show today and speaking with me. I'm looking forward to getting to know you and what you do.
Oh, thank you. Me too. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I know that you're a woman of many, many different talents, many different skills. So how would you elevator pitch summarize what Radhi does right now? Because who knows, it might change. It's changed in the past. But what's the current elevator spiel for Radhi?
What is my elevator spiel? I would say I am officially an author of a book, which I never thought I'd be able to say, which is great. And I just love creating content online that helps people bring joy to their life. So whether that's in the form of health and wellness, whether that's in the form of food and recipes, whether that's in the form of spiritual practices and wellness practices that have enriched my life, I think everything I do has a thread of joy that kind of goes through it. And that's really how I've based everything that I've done. It's how can I bring even a small amount more joy to people's lives through everything that I do.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love that. You know, I feel like joy is a piece that is missing from a lot of fitness, nutrition, wellness arenas. It's not really something we talk about, or the concept of play. You know, we kind of leave that on the sideline, but I think it's pretty important for mental health. And I really appreciate that you you have that on the forefront of what you do. That's pretty awesome.
I agree. When I think about what motivates people the most to actually make sustainable change, it's like fear no longer works. Like fear is something that will make you do something for a short period of time, and it won't be something that continues because the desire and the intention behind it, with anything based on fear, never ever ends up being sustainable. And so when I've thought about what actually creates positive change, it's not fear, it's not aggression, it's not guilt. It really is what is making me feel more joyful, what is making me feel my best, feel my happiest, not even the external things linked to it, but what is making me feel better as a person and feel closer to being the person I want to be. And so, I agree with you. I think joy can filter through everything that we do to be able to make it more, to enrich it and also make us have those changes, but be able to also sustain them.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I fully agree. It works for anything. Changes you're trying to make, businesses you're trying to build, habits you're trying to establish. This kind of ties in with your cookbook title, which is JoyFull. And it's completely plant-based, which is obviously why we're having a chat on a vegan show. So what's your background, though? I want to talk about the book, of course, but are you vegan? Did you have like a catalyst that made you think about becoming plant-based? What's your story?
So I was actually born vegetarian. So I've actually never had meat before. And so I was born vegetarian and I turned vegan about 10 years ago now. And I read a book by James Saffron, Eating Animals, something my sister recommended because she turned vegan before I did. And then after reading that, I just could not go back to my usual ways, no matter how much I love the pulley cheese that you get on pizza or the or the British chocolates that were like my favorite. I was like, it's just not worth it anymore. Like the suffering just isn't worth it.
Yep, I hear you on that. It took me a while to make the connection that if I was vegetarian for ethical reasons, I actually had to be vegan because you're still supporting the dairy industry and all the meat industries are basically one and the same, right? So I can relate to that for sure.
Yeah. And it's kind of just like, is my satisfaction worth someone suffering? Like that's the balance that you're always playing in your mind, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
with anything in life, whether it's humans, whether it's animals, it's is my satisfaction and my wants and fulfilling my senses, because it's not necessarily linked to health. It is to do with our senses and what we crave and what we're used to, worth the suffering of another being? And am I willing to ingest that suffering and accept that suffering in order to satisfy myself? And I always think that that's the way up. Like, even if it's going out and buying a pair of shoes and, yeah, it's a lot harder to buy shoes as a vegan. It really is. You can't walk into most sport, if you want to buy trainers or sneakers, you can't really walk in and buy them. So there is a lot of sacrifice on your part, but at the same time, it's like minimal sacrifice for another life, essentially.
Yeah, I fully agree. I'm fully with you on that. And you know what actually made me think about reasons people go vegan and, the ethical piece here is you mentioned fear and aggression and constructs that don't really lead to lasting change. Or if they do, they're really not good for our mental health, probably. So it's kind of like that in the vegan world, I think. People who are going vegan for these reasons to reduce suffering, we're really eating in a way that's aligning with our values. That's huge versus someone who just saw a headline about, oh, the vegan diet will make you lose weight or something. I mean, that's pretty surface level, maybe fear-based for some folks, but I don't feel like that goes deep enough to really affect long-term change.
Yeah, and I think, anything linked to a goal, as soon as you hit the goal, you lose the attachment to what you're doing because you've met it and there's no longer a need for it. But I also think there are so many people who do come into it for that reason. Like, there's so many entry points to becoming vegan and to living a plant-based lifestyle. And I think even if there are so many friends that I had who came in because, oh, my skin can't take dairy and I want my skin to be better. And then as they dove into the plant-based life and as their consciousness was elevated through not having meat and not having the lower like, for me, I always think about it as energetic levels. Also, what we eat affects us just not in our physical body, but also our consciousness and our mind. And when you end up eating meat, it is, lower energetic fuel that you're allowing into your body. You're allowing something that is essentially dead, the energy of something which is dead, through into your alive body. And so once actually someone shifts, even if it is for their own purpose, whether it's skin or diet or whatever, when you end up feeling the difference of living at a higher vibration, it almost like you need the taste of something higher and the knowing what it feels like to feel better, to be able to let go of the things which no longer serve you and are no longer good for you. And so I think that's a big part of it too. Like, you don't realize how much that dormant energy of something that is no longer alive that you put into your body weighs down and has a heaviness in your mind, in your body, and in your consciousness too.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting point. I mean, for me, I don't consider myself spiritual at all. I'm basically the opposite. But I think there's a lot of different ways that we can understand that concept, of eating something that was alive and had a nervous system. I mean, technically, the plants we're eating are not alive either, but they didn't have an existence and a nervous system and feelings. And, it's a completely different situation, of course. So I think back to living in a way that aligns with our values. There's something to be said for alignment with actions and beliefs and how that feels and mental health and how that affects us positively. So I think we could look at that in a lot of different ways, but I like the overall concept.
Yeah, and I mean everything carries energy. Like, everything carries energy. Every single thing that we are around, like, you don't just have to see the way that you interact with someone. When I talk to you, I feel an energy. When you talk to me, you feel an energy from me. And so I think even if you can't see something, it doesn't mean it doesn't affect you. Just like you see air, but that doesn't mean it doesn't affect you. It doesn't, contribute to the way that you're breathing. And so there is energy that's carried through everything, and through the food that we eat and the things that we interact with. And so, yeah, I think I think it's such an important part of when we're choosing what we choose to be around and what we eat as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So let's talk about your cookbook. Speaking of things to eat, I think there's something like 125 recipes in there, which is pretty impressive. So it's not out yet. It's going to be out for pre-sale. Tell us about this project. And congratulations, by the way. This is your first cookbook officially. So you're now an author. Welcome to the club. It's pretty excellent. So tell us about your project.
Thank you. Yeah, so it comes out February 27th. So I'm not sure when this is airing, but if it's after Feb 27th, then it will be out by then. But it is a culmination of recipes that I have grown up eating, that takes into account my heritage, being from India, where I've lived, across America, across London, in the UK. Everything that I've tasted and allowed through my senses is what this book has. And so there's everything from curries and lentils, but there's also burgers and pastas and noodle dishes and frittata muffins. And there's just so much variety that I've incorporated into the book, because a big part of the book, and why I called it JoyFull, is the concept that you do not have to choose between food that tastes good or that makes you feel good and also brings you joy. I think we're so used to disconnecting the two. And I really wanted to show how food that makes you feel good can also bring you joy and make you feel happy when you're eating it. And so I've tried to marry those two through the book, and then weave through the recipes. There's everything from wellness rituals to tips on how to connect back to your body and understand what your body needs are, rather than listening to everybody else around you telling them that this is what made them feel better and these are the foods that works best for them, but what actually works best for you. And so tips on how to tune back in and understand what your body needs are, and also just how to create an optimal life that allows the environment around you and your body to sync and create an optimal health for yourself.
I think that's brilliant. How would you describe what intuitive eating is? So I think a lot of what you just said kind of is moving in that direction, right? Like listening to what our bodies are telling us. That's kind of an intuitive approach, right? So how would you describe what intuitive eating is?
I would describe intuitive eating as, number one, being present with your food. And by presence, I also mean knowledge, because you can't understand what something does for you without understanding it, right? Like, you can't understand what this potato is going to do to your body unless you know what the qualities of this potato are, what nutrients they have, like all of those things. And so education is such a big part of intuitive eating. education of the foods that you are putting on your plate, but then also education of your body. And so I think of it as, how does my body feel when I'm eating this? Does it make me, simply could be, does it make me feel good, energetic, happy? Does it bring life to my body, or does it make me feel stagnant and lethargic and cause gut issues for me? There are so many different ways we can describe what feeling good and feeling bad is. But first of all, start by, what does it mean for me to feel good? And then you can break down, well, these are the things that make me feel good, and these are the things that don't. And then it's also everything from hunger cues. When you start actually listening to your body, you notice how much your body actually requires. And some days it may be more than others, and some seasons it may feel more than others. We are so in sync with nature. We don't just live in nature, we are part of nature. And so a lot of what is happening around us affects our internal body too. So when it's winter, we crave such different foods to when it's summer. And so intuitive eating for me is awareness, like becoming more aware. And that's really the foundation of it.
I like that you included awareness and also education, because I feel like those two pieces aren't often both included in this realm. Like some people think intuitive eating is, oh, well, my brain is telling me I want Oreos, so I guess I'm going to have some Oreos then.
Yeah.
Which it might be in some cases, who knows? But I like the approach of marrying both the education piece and the awareness piece, and not just thinking about what a food feels like or tastes like as we're consuming it, but how do you feel afterwards? How is this going to serve you, in the hours to days after you eat it? Because, hey, I could sit there and eat a whole box of Oreos, but am I going to feel great after that? Probably not.
Yeah, you feel good in the moment with that sugar rush, but maybe not afterwards. And I think that comes down to fine tuning our senses. When what I mean by that is, we're so used to eating and living through our senses versus our body. So our senses want instant stimulation and instant gratification. And so when we're eating, you can either eat through your senses where, oh my gosh, I'm so hungry. And when you're eating through your senses, you'll pile your plate on and you'll have so much food on there. And actually, when you start eating, your body's telling you, I'm full with half of this plate, but your senses want to keep indulging. And so I think there's a big difference between eating through our senses and eating through our body and understanding what that is. And so being able to differentiate the two is also part of that. So, and a lot of our eating is paired and connected and intertwined to our mood and our feelings, because a lot of us eat through our emotions also. I do that all the time. It's like I feel a little bit low in energy and I'm craving high sugar foods. It's because of the associations we've created to food as well. And so it's really stripping all of that back and going back to the basics of what makes my body thrive. And that's where you start intuitive eating from.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that makes sense. We work with a lot of folks in our fitness and nutrition coaching practice who have had very challenging relationships with food in the past. So whether it's just a relationship or a full-blown diagnosed eating disorder, we can't work with someone who has one at the moment, just scope of practice, of course. But in the past, some folks have different histories. So do you think there's a different approach here? Is it all applicable to all humans? Are there things that we need to keep in mind for some folks who feel triggered or who, have kind of different relationships with food, either in the past or right now?
Yeah, I think a lot of it isn't to do with the food and it's to do with our mental state. And so there's a lot of that association, which actually has nothing to do with the food and everything to do with our emotions, our feeling, and our mental association to the food. And so it could have been food, it could have been shopping, it could have been drugs or alcohol. Like so much of the food we eat imitates and mimics how alcohol and drugs end up being affecting our body. Sugar is a prime example of that. It really does have that same effect on our body, maybe to a lesser extent, but still the same kind of reactions our body gets. I remember when I gave up sugar, even for a short period of time, like completely cut it out, I was getting such bad headaches in the afternoon. I was having serious withdrawal symptoms from just cutting out sugar. And that's when I was like, wow, I need to be in a situation where I control the food and food doesn't control me. But what is that going to take? And so I had to learn my associations. And so it took a lot of reflecting on what those associations are. One of them was, oh, I'm so used to family gatherings where love and affection and joy has been around eating comfort food. And so that then trickled into my adulthood where, oh, we're having friends around. Let me order pizzas and desserts and order all of these foods that make me think of happiness versus making me feel good. So now I've changed it and I'm like, let me give people food that make them feel good, where they leave and they feel nourished and energized and happy. And so I think it's breaking it down in your mind and thinking, is this a food problem or is this something I need to see someone about to help dissociate my mental state with the food that I'm eating and change that relationship and connection to it? I'm not an expert on this, so this is just my initial thoughts about it. But, we blame the food when really it could be something deep rooted.
I think you're absolutely right. And I'm not an expert in this area either, which is why we would refer out if this was a client of ours dealing with it currently. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think there are mental health professionals whose area of expertise is the mental health piece related to food. And so I think that's a good opportunity for those folks, definitely. So what's mindful cooking? What's mindful eating? Is that the same as intuitive? I feel like mindfulness is a different practice.
Yeah, it is. Mindfulness is everything from what vegetables are you picking? Are they in season? Are they the vegetables that your body is accepting at the moment, or is it causing digestive issues for you? So even from the moment of when you start choosing what ingredients you're going to put into your food, it should be a mindful practice. It can go from the moment you're picking the vegetables to, I deeply believe in creating an intention. Like, we can either use food just to fuel us, and it can be just a basic, I'm going to eat this, it's going to nourish my physical body, and I'm going to leave it at that. Or, I go back to the energy aspect of it where we feel so different when we eat food that is cooked by people that love us. Like, that practice of pouring an intention and love into food is felt when you eat your mum's food. It's felt when you eat, food by somebody that's really thought and cared about how they're preparing it. And so mindful cooking is that practice too. Like, let me not be angry and agitated and distracted while I'm cooking this meal that's going to nourish my body. That allows me to do the service that I'm meant to do in this world. That allows me to help people. That allows me to do everything that I want to do in this world. Let me see it as a sacred practice of fueling my body, but, doing it with mind and with heart too. And so it can be everything from how you're cooking, what you're listening to while you're cooking, what you're thinking about while you're cooking. All of that can get poured into the food also. And then having a moment just before you're eating, so many people, so many things have gone into creating this meal. And so a moment of gratitude is so important. There's been studies that have shown that they say that when you end up being grateful for what you're eating, even your digestive system takes it better. Like, when you're anxious and you're eating food, it affects your digestive system. Like, your anxiety goes through to your digestion. In the same way, eating in a space of calm and ease and gratitude brings a lot more ease to our body, can make such a difference to how the food is digested. And so it goes all the way through from the beginning when you're thinking about what you're making all the way to the point of eating it.
I like that. I kind of have a couple different thoughts in this area. One is, this sounds like an ideal wave a magic wand situation where everyone can be mindful while they're cooking, everyone is grateful before they eat, everyone is not stressed. But the reality is a lot of folks live in poverty or food deserts, or they have 3 jobs because they're a single parent, right? So I feel like it's a privilege to be able to be mindful about our food. It's a privilege to be able to go to a grocery store and pick whatever vegetables we want, So I don't know. I don't really know if I have a coherent thought around this other than, well, some folks don't really have the same accessibility, and it's not necessarily available to everyone equally.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. But I can also say that, I've been to villages where in India where people will still have that moment of gratitude before I don't think gratitude is, sometimes actually when you're in a situation where you have less, there's so much more gratitude that people feel. Like, I know people who have hardly anything. When I go to India, I see them and they have the deepest sense of gratitude, almost more than when, us mindlessly going through our day, eating and consuming and not even thinking about the fact that we're so lucky to have this food on our plate. And so, yes, some of the practices are probably out of reach and not accessible for everyone, but the process of being grateful, I think that's something that is accessible to everyone. And I've seen it accessible at different parts of the world with different finances, different economic statuses. I think that's something I've seen beautifully. And that's actually what's instilled it in me, where I've seen someone who maybe just has like a bread roll once a day or something, and their excitement and their enthusiasm and their gratitude for it is far deeper than us who gets a meal, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks in between.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point. Maybe that means that our brain and how it operates is a lot more in our control than a lot of us think, right?
Yes, exactly.
That's really cool. How about talking about some of the spices that you use and flavor? One of the points you had on our list was like how to use spices to amp up the flavor of your meals and heal your body on a daily basis. So where does this come from? A certain background of education or Indian family, secret recipes? Like what's the background on this?
Yeah, so growing up, I grew up in an Indian family, and so spices were definitely the base of all dishes. Before you even start cooking anything else, you're sautéing the spices, and then you're adding everything else into it. And so whether it was when I'm ill, my mum using spices to for my coughs and colds, or whether I had a cut on my leg, and my mum would be making a turmeric patty to like put onto my cut, or whether it was just to increase the vibrance and flavor into food. Spices have always been a huge part of my life. And so I kind of took it for granted growing up because it was something that I was so used to. And then I studied Ayurveda, which is Ayur means life or longevity, and Veda means knowledge. It's the most ancient, it's like a 5,000-year-old health system that really uses natural and holistic methods of healing. And when I learned about that, spices are a huge part of that. They have such potency when used in the right way. And so I've essentially for the past, 8 years used spices as my medicine box. Like whenever I'm feeling, spices, and I say spices and essential oils definitely have been my go-tos whenever I'm feeling under the weather, or, if I have a tooth infection, I will put clove oil in there. And there's so many different properties to spices. And so a big part of my book is helping to educate people on how easy it is to incorporate spices into your food, not just for the flavor and to keep your food feeling exciting, but also to help to heal your digestion, to boost your immunity, and to really just help the vitality of your body. I have a simple one that I do every morning. It's coriander, cumin, and fennel seeds boiled in hot water, a really simple way to get spices into your life. But these three spices help with digestion. They help to remove a lot of the toxins because during the night, our body obviously processes and starts to eliminate things that we don't need. And so it's all gentle, but it gently helps to kind of remove the toxins that we no longer need in our body. And it helps to stimulate your digestion. It ignites it after having been rested for 8 hours or 9 hours during the night. And then there are so many different ways. I would say you could take like a humble potato and you can add spices from all over the world, and you can taste different parts of the world through what you're cooking just by changing the spices that you're using. And so even if you're on a budget and you're having to use the same ingredients every single day, like let's say we're using the basics of rice, lentils, and maybe the same vegetables, just by changing three spices that you have every single day, you can create a completely different meal and have it still feel exciting with different flavors.
Yeah, that's basically what we do in our household is, similar foods, different spices. So I like that approach.
Yeah.
Yeah, and our audience here is very scientifically literate and skeptical. So when they hear things like helping our body eliminate toxins, their red flag is going to go up. Yeah, but that's what our liver and our kidneys are for, right? So I feel like, yeah, there are actually some spices, some essential oils that have a surprising amount of studies that have shown that these things can help with cognition and healing and, helping with inflammation and stuff. But then there's a lot of them that haven't, that have either been studied and have been shown to have no effect, or they just haven't been studied enough yet, right? So I feel like it's a very broad kind of area, and some of it is supported and some of it isn't.
Yeah, I do think, when I think about the different industries that there are and the money that's behind a lot of different industries, I just have, I studied nutrition, I studied dietetics, I did a lot of, I did my dissertation looking at all the different research that was done in different areas. And what I realized was, one, there's a lot of funding that goes on behind specific things, like, for example, the dairy industry, or there's so much money behind certain things where, of course, there's going to be more research in certain areas because so many people are spending money to make sure that those things are what people are listening to and hearing about. And then there are other areas, and I find that more so in the natural, when you're trying to do studies based on things which are a little bit more natural, that don't cost as much money, that are essentially like going into Whole Foods, buying some spices. It doesn't do very well for the pharmaceutical industry, which may end up if people are using that to heal their bodies, then they're not going to end up getting unwell and then ending up having to buy lots of medication. And so I'm not saying that that's the case for everything, but what I will say is I think there's been research that's been shown time and time again where they're like, this food is amazing for you, or, cigarettes are amazing for you. And then suddenly the research is like, actually, cigarettes are not great for you. And then it's like this, this superfood is going to be incredible for you, or, vaping, it's going to be much better for you. And then people start vaping and then they realize that actually it's causing broccoli lungs and it's not great for you. And so my actual honest belief is that it's about trying things and seeing how it makes you feel, right? Like I have had friends who've told me when they started this CCFT, which, there's been some Ayurvedic research about, but some people will say, it was only done on X amount of people, or, it wasn't done on enough people to make it a proper study. But what helps me is hearing people's feedback, like, oh, I drank water in the way that you told me to drink water and my digestion has changed, or I stopped drinking ice cold water and my food digests so much better. I don't have loose stools anymore, or my acid reflux has gone away because I've been drinking that CCFT in the morning and I used to get acid every single day. And so I think for me, it's like, even if you don't believe it, one, you're not going to have to spend much money to try and actually test it out. And if it doesn't work, the good thing about it is it's not like it's not like the chemical things which may end up harming your body. Actually, spices, they're so subtle in the way that they react to your body that you may notice benefit over a period of time. You may even notice it the moment you take it. Like for me, when I take fennel seeds and I am gassy or bloated, we have a practice in India. As soon as you finish your meal, you take a mouthful of fennel seeds. Without doubt, it takes down your bloating. It makes you feel way less gassy. It releases gas that's in your body. And so whenever I've overeaten or whenever I feel discomfort, I'll take fennel seeds. And I know without a doubt, that's what's going to happen for me. But how did I learn that? Through trial and testing and having that practice with it. And so I think we very easily end up believing a lot of things that we're told, whether it's through social media, whether it's through the news, whatever is trending. But really, we have to go back to, taking the power of our health back into our own hands to a certain degree, because otherwise we're going to continuously keep thinking, this is going to heal me. No, this is going to heal me. No, wait, they said this one's going to heal me. And so, I find I totally agree with what you say. There are so many things that come out that aren't backed at all, and it's a money-making scheme. And I've seen that time and time again. But then there are other things which are ancient and don't actually cost that much money and have come from thousands and thousands of years of maybe not clinical research, but evidence-based people research, where people have passed it down because it's helped them, with no agenda, no desire to make money off it. It's just, my grandma used it. My grandma told my mum told me, and we've all been using it and it's made us feel amazing. And so I think I really appreciate sometimes things that are passed down versus things that are even told to me or shown, that I'm shown studies about, because it's been passed down with little agenda attached to it.
I think that's a really interesting point. I think a lot of traditional knowledge is looked at this way, right? I think we can have both. We don't need to be exclusive on the peer-reviewed research front or the traditional front. I think there's a place for both. And I really like that idea of, not having monetary interests, and, it's just someone sharing information that worked for them, and then test it out yourself. It may or may not work for you as an individual, but that's kind of how health in general should work, right? Everyone's different.
Definitely. My 90-year-old grandma has not got a partnership with anybody that makes turmeric. So I'm like, we're good.
She's not working for big turmeric, eh?
No, no, definitely not. She's not got a secret spice company she's gonna bring out in like when she's 91. This is just just age-old knowledge.
Oh yeah, she's just been grooming everyone for 90 years, and then when she turns 91, she's going to turn it all around and start a business, right?
Exactly.
That's what's really happening here.
Yeah. Oh God.
Awesome. Well, Radhi, it was so great speaking with you. Was there anything you want to leave our listeners with? By the way, our episode is coming out on February 20th, so it is before the official launch of your book. So pre-sales, what would you like to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, you can or pre-order my book if it sounds like something that you'd be interested in or that someone else that you know might be interested in at www.joyfullbook.com. I always see myself as a grateful student of many great teachers, and I'm just so grateful for what I have learned in my life and how much it has changed my life that I've essentially just poured it all into this book. And so whether you take one practice or one recipe and it makes you feel a little bit more joy in your life, that's really the purpose of it. So yeah, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. This was a great conversation.
Thanks so much. Much appreciated. Radhi, thank you again for joining me on the show, and congratulations on the publication of your book. To get your hands on it, make sure you check out the links at our show notes, nobullshitvegan.com/168. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the No Bullshit Vegan podcast at nobullshitvegan.com.